Hey there, Braves fans. Welcome to another edition of State of the Braves. I'm your host, George McNair. It is really good to be back with you guys. I know it has been a little bit of a break. Sorry about that. I was actually out of the country. I was in Italy for a week. I know that sounds really impressive. I don't go out of the country very often, so this was a really cool trip to do, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So obviously it was hard to watch the Braves a ton when you're out of the country. Not impossible. I did see one of the games with the Reds live. You're 6 hours ahead of the U.S. when you're in Italy, so I watched that day game at night. But otherwise, it was pretty difficult to catch them. I was able to kind of go back and watch a good bit of those games, and of course, I was back to watch the latest Marlins game, which was a very fun one to watch. If every game could be like that game, it would be it would be less stressful as a fan, but also a lot of fun. But of course, they can't all be that way. But man, the Braves have been crushing the ball lately. It is really fun to watch. The month of June has been an incredibly successful month as the Braves have really begun to separate themselves from not only the National League East in a lot of ways, even though the Marlins have played pretty well in June as well, but also just baseball, the rest of baseball in general. Really, the Braves and Tampa Bay and maybe Texas seem to be the class of baseball right now. But it was definitely a fun month of June. Let me just go into a few things as I kind of break down how good the Braves have been this month. And not to toot my own horn, guys, but I knew that this month was going to set up pretty well for the Braves. There weren't a ton of really good teams that they would be playing in this month. If you'll recall, May was kind of a slog to get through. The Braves were only 15-14 in May, but as the schedule turned, the Braves began to play better baseball, but they also had an easier schedule, and they definitely beat up on the teams that they should have beat up on. The only thing that we did not see coming in June was how good the Reds were going to become. So that was an interesting showdown of good teams. But other than that, the Braves really beat up on some lesser teams in this month. The Braves had the most home runs in a month in National League history. So historic stuff, guys. 61 home runs in the month of June. The Yankees are the only team to better that. And I think there should maybe be an asterisk by this. The Yankees had an insane 74 home runs in a month in the year 2019, and you'll recall that season was the supposed juiced ball year. Most people accept that the ball was juiced in that year just because home run totals were so abnormal in that season. So 74, I mean, the number is just absurd when you start to think of how many home runs the Braves hit. A team hit 13 more. It's kind of crazy. Nonetheless, they set the National League home run record at 61, and they do so in a resounding fashion as they had 6 home runs last night in the last game in the calendar month of June. The best record in baseball for the month of June, the Braves went 21-4 in June. Just an incredible run of games. And of those 4 losses, 3 of those losses were by just 1 run. It's easy to see, actually, if you go back to those losses, the Braves probably could have or should have won 2 of those games. Teams came back and beat them, but it's hard to complain about those losses when you win 21 of 25 games. The best record in the National League by 5 games. The Braves have a 5-game lead over every other team in the National League. They sit at 54-27. Only Tampa Bay has a better record in the major leagues. Tampa Bay right now is 57-28. Kind of weird that Tampa Bay's played 4 more games than the Braves, though the Braves have had a couple of rainouts. So that's only percentage points ahead of the Braves. So obviously they've lost 1 more game, but won 3 more. So yeah, we know Tampa Bay is really good. But I do want to say, of course, Tampa Bay had that incredible beginning to the season, but I do think that start of the season, of course, those games count as well, but that start of the season might cloud, what is now. I mean, I would say the Braves have played better baseball since the first 2 weeks of the season, and I wonder if Tampa Bay really is quite as good as their record suggests. I think they're a good team, don't get me wrong, but I do wonder if some of their numbers and some of their record is maybe a little elevated compared to what is reality. Nonetheless, we reached the halfway point of the season with last night's game, and so projections are really easy when you're exactly halfway through the season, 81 games in. The Braves are right now on pace for 108 wins. And that is particularly remarkable when you consider that they have accomplished this basically without Max Fried and Kyle Wright for the season. If you had told anyone that the Braves would lose these guys for at the very least the first half of the year, I doubt many people would have thought that they would be on pace for 108 wins. But they've had a good, maybe not great, but good bullpen. They've had several guys step up in the rotation, especially Bryce Elder, that you maybe would not have seen coming. And then, of course, their offense has been off the charts, especially in June. So it's been a team effort in a lot of ways. Ronald Acuna is, number one on the list of guys who have just exploded offensively and done some incredible things. So, but it's not just one guy. I mean, the Braves are a deep team, especially deep offensively, and it does make you think, what could this team look like if they get a healthy Max Fried back for the second part of the season in the playoffs? I kind of stumbled upon this, but I was going through the baseballreference.com page, and they have percentage chances of teams making the playoffs and that sort of thing. So I thought it'd be fun to look at those numbers for the Braves, and they're very favorable for the Braves right now. So the Braves currently have a 99.9% chance of making the playoffs. This is good news. They would have to implode on a historical level to not make the playoffs at this point. Interestingly enough, the Mets only have a 1.4% chance of making the playoffs at this point as their season continues to go down the tubes. It is quite amazing to think about that team and the millions upon millions of dollars that they put into their club, and it is not paid off in any way, shape, or form. And Braves fans know this. It feels like baseball, just many teams don't figure this out. It's not easy to just plug in good players who've been good in the past and assume that a baseball club is just going to gel and succeed. We see that with the Mets. We've also seen that with the San Diego Padres this year. You have these great players, and yet it's not cohesive. It doesn't coalesce together as a great team. And, when you have 162 games and guys are with each other, constantly for 6, 7, 8 months, they need to be able to get along and play well together and encourage each other. And we see the Braves do this so well and have done this so well really since the early 90s. They know what it means to build teams and kind of get better as the season goes and get closer as a team. And that's what they do. And some of these other teams, particularly when you bring a lot of free agents in at the same time, it's not easy, and it's certainly not guaranteed that team is going to play well together. And sometimes they're going to play below what they really are capable of playing. But anyways, I'd say the poor Mets, but I'm not feeling bad about the Mets, guys. All right. The Braves also have a 98.9% chance to win the division. That is incredible. That number was pretty incredible to me. I think part of that is a belief in the Braves, and some of that is seeing the Marlins are probably going to come down to earth a little bit more. By the way, I meant to mention this to you. So all the playoff odds that baseballreference.com has, this is based off of 1,000 simulations and the last 100 games played for each team. Okay, so just giving you a little bit of, these aren't just plucked out of thin air or some guy in a room coming up with these. All right, so the Braves have a 41.4% chance to win the pennant. That also is a really high number. The Dodgers are the next closest team at only 17.2%. So the Braves are looking right now, of course, as it stands, the Braves are looking incredibly good. and it sure seems like they are the best team, at the very least, the best team in the National League. All right, and then the final number, the Braves have a 21.7% chance to win the World Series. That is the best in baseball. Of course, you see all of these, power rankings and things, and Tampa Bay has been consistently number one for a while. Tampa Bay is the next closest team at 20%, and the Braves and Tampa Bay have by far the best percentage chance according to this simulation. So could a Braves Tampa Bay World Series be in the mix? Yeah, maybe. Of course, Texas has also been really good. I like Texas. I think they might actually have a better team in the long run than Tampa Bay, but obviously that is yet to be seen. Things can go really right for the Braves or really wrong. I mean, as we know, baseball is a long season, and we've also seen some really tough things come down the pike, the Max Fried injury being one of them, but things could fall right for them, and obviously the thing the Braves has going for them is the depth. If one or two guys were to fall with injury or get into a prolonged slump, there's a whole lot of guys on this team that could fill the void with their great play. All right, just a little bit of Braves news. The All-Star starters were named this week. I hope you guys had a chance to vote. Braves, I just appreciate Braves fans. Braves fans vote. Braves fans are engaged. I think we always have been, but particularly with this, the last 5 years, and of course a World Series run, I just think Braves fans are really engaged, maybe more than any other fan base in baseball. We also know that the Braves fan base is nationwide. You see that when the Braves go out on the road, there's always a ton of Braves fans in the stands. So they are showing up to vote. Ronald Acuna had the most votes of any player in any league. That gave him a guaranteed starting spot early on. And then it came out that Sean Murphy and Orlando Arcia were also named all-star starters. This is the first selection for Murphy and the first selection for Arcia, and it's particularly got to be special for Arcia, being a guy who, he came up as a top prospect, had struggles in Milwaukee, eventually gets traded and is relegated to AAA basically for a full season, and then is a backup for the Braves for 2 years, and then here he is. I mean, we all know the story of him getting the starting nod at the end of spring training this year, and to turn that into not only an all-star appearance, but an all-star start is just quite remarkable. He's actually hit a little bit of struggles in the last couple weeks. I think his average is right down around 300. It's been as high as in the 330s this season. So I do wonder if maybe he's starting to feel a little bit of pressure now that he's been named an all-star. But part of me is like, who cares? I mean, he's been way more than I think even the Braves could have expected this season. I hope he can continue it throughout the entirety of this season and that really cheap contract that the Braves were able to get for him. He's signed for 2 more years at really cheap money. So, but just awesome for him. I know that a lot of people say he's one of the favorite Braves in the clubhouse, and he brings a lot to the team, not just on the field. So great for Orlando. He was also helped by the fact that there really is not another National League shortstop that's playing well this season. So that might be part of it too. But he had a huge gap between his voting totals and number 2, which was, I think, Francisco Lindor. So again, Ronald, Sean Murphy, and let's not sleep on him either, has had a tremendous start to his Braves career, and Orlando Arcia are all very deserving, number 1, and they will all 3 be starting for the National League All-Star team. I also started to think who else could make the team. The team will actually be announced tomorrow, July 2nd in the evening, I think on MLB Network. And the guys, as I was going through, I project actually 4 more guys. So that would be pretty impressive for the Braves to have 7 All-Stars. Sometimes, because of the All-Star requirements for every team to have an All-Star, you might have somebody be left off, of a team like the Braves, just because you have so many. It ends up that a Brave might get knocked off of the roster. But I project Matt Olson, Ozzie, Strider, and Elder to all make the team. I think Olson and Ozzie are kind of sure things. Elder probably as well. Strider, the only thing, if you have somebody looking at his ERA, it's a higher ERA for an all-star. I think he's around 3.7 ERA, but he's leading the league in strikeouts. He's a top 10 pitcher in the major leagues in WHIP. So I think ultimately he will be there as well. So that's 7 dudes. And I think you also could see Riley, but because I think in other years you might see him, even though he's had some struggles for him, he still has decent numbers, but because there's so many other Braves that are deserving, I don't think Riley's going to make the team this year. There are a few other third base options that are right around the same value as Riley, so I think he's going to miss out this year. All right, other Braves news. A.J. Smith-Shawver was sent down after a couple of less effective starts. Of course, he came up and pitched pretty well. But look, he's 20 years old, and I think this was a scenario where the Braves wanted to see what he had, but they also probably understood that Mike Soroka was going to need a few more starts in AAA to iron things out before they brought him back up for the second time. And that's exactly what happened. Soroka gets the call as Shawver gets sent down. And we'll get into Soroka and his outing last night here in a minute. The other bit of Braves news, Dylan Lee was also transferred to the 60-day injured list. So, he's one of the Braves' better relief pitchers, so this hurts for a little bit. This means he will be eligible to return in mid-July, right around the same time that Max Fried, if all things go well, could get back. So the Braves could really get, if both these guys can come back healthy, could really get a shot in the arm, maybe a shot in the left arm, for if Dylan Lee and Max Fried can come back at the same time and be added to that pitching staff. So hopefully all things will go well there. All right, so let me go through. It's been almost 2 weeks, guys, since I've been with you. And again, I really apologize for that, but it was hard for me to figure out a way to do any episodes while I was gone. So that being said, a lot of games and a lot of things have happened since then. I'm not going to recap everything, but I do want to go back, just talk very briefly about the Red series and the Twins series, and then we will get into last night's game against the Marlins. So, the Red series was just this back and forth slugfest. I think one thing that you take away from the Red series is the Reds are, I think, probably for real. They're probably a playoff caliber team. The NL Central is down, but you have the Reds and the Brewers and the Pirates all kind of vying for that top spot. You're not going to get a wild card team out of the Central, more than likely. Maybe you would, but more than likely not. And Cincy definitely looks good. And of course, Ellie De La Cruz has come up. He hit for the cycle against the Braves in one game. He just looks like this incredibly dynamic player, kind of a left-handed Acuna in some ways. I'm not going to put that on him yet, but I mean, definitely in terms of speed and power combo is pretty impressive. But the Braves are able to take 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati. Every game was back and forth. You came out of that series with the bullpen just being totally taxed. And we know that Cincinnati's ballpark is kind of ridiculously small. So you have a ton of home runs from both teams in that series. But yeah, I mean, you do come away with that saying the Reds are a pretty good team, and they certainly played the Braves tough. Braves could have won that first game, but since he came back in that game, and then the Braves were able to take the next 2. So coming off of that series, the Braves very impressively are able to sweep the Twins. The Twins I think they came into this series leading the AL Central, which is also down. I don't know why both Central areas are they don't have great baseball right now, but the Twins were right about 500 coming into this. So, a decent team, but definitely not a great team by any means, and the Braves took it to them. So in game 1, you have Spencer Strider pitching really well, and this is obviously super encouraging. 7 innings pitched, 10 strikeouts, only 1 earned run off of a Joey Gallo home run, solo home run, obviously. And Strider, it just appears like he's figured a couple things out to right the ship. He's had 2 solid outings after, several really not good starts and 2 particularly bad starts for him. So, yeah, I mean, you got to feel good about that. You also have Ozuna and Acuna going deep in the 7th inning of this game to put the Braves up for good. The Braves win this game 4-1. So, yeah, Strider, he is the thing when I watch him now, okay, why is suddenly he kind of back to what he was doing before these struggles? Well, I think he's probably has made some kind of mechanical adjustment. He is spotting his fastball much better. I told you guys that I think that was one of the biggest issues was there was something happening where not only was his velocity down, which a lot of people, are going to harp on that a little bit more, which is fine, but, the velocity is down, but also that fastball is more in the middle of the plate. And if you go back and see Strider at his best, he's able to spot a 98, 99 mile an hour fastball on the corners of the zone. And he was doing that a lot more in this game. So yeah, velocity back up, but also command of that pitch is where he needs it to be. And when he can command the fastball, then the slider is going to be way more effective. He's going to get way more swings and misses off of that, which he was doing in this game. And he also threw the changeup a bit more in this game, which, I don't think the changeup is an incredibly special pitch for him. But if he can throw it, basically where it looks like, obviously it looks like a fastball, maybe dives just out of the zone a little bit. And he did get some swings and misses off of that pitch as well. So I think he's figuring out his pitch mix a little bit better, but it all works off of that fastball command, because the truth of the matter is teams, and you have to play it this way, and this is generally how hitting works, you have to work off the fastball. Well, Strider has an elite fastball. So hitters are going to come to the box just selling out for that fastball. And so if he gives it to them at 96 down the middle, they can hit it. If he gives it to them at 98, 99 on the corners, they're not going to hit it. And they're at least not going to hit it with any kind of authority. You might see a couple bloop hits the other way, which you saw in that game. But that's about it, and you can deal with that. So, yeah, it's great that Strider seems to be back on the horse there. All right, game 2. The Braves hit 4 home runs in this game. They definitely came out firing in just a barrage against the Twins starter in this game. Acuna, Riley, Murphy, and Harris all hit home runs, and they all hit them within the first 2 innings of the game. And then you get another solid start from Bryce Elder. So a lot of good things here. I just would highlight Riley. I think he's starting to come out of it again. It is a little frustrating that he seems to be this player who just comes in waves of 2 bad weeks, maybe 3 bad weeks, 2 really, really good weeks, and just this up and down. And I know that he would like to get out of that where he can be more consistent. But that being said, I do think he's coming out of it. He's hit a couple home runs and is driving the ball in that right center gap a lot more recently. So he looks good. That's really encouraging. So I actually expect him to have a nice run leading up to the All-Star break here in the next 2 weeks. And of course, all 4 of those guys I mentioned are just hitting the ball really well right now. So encouraging stuff there. And then game 3 against the Twins, you get this spot start from Colby Allard. A lot of people thought Michael Soroka would be brought up for this start. The Braves hold off for a couple more days for him. So Colby Allard, who we have not seen yet this season, he had an oblique, sprain or tweak or whatever you call it at the end of spring training. He actually pitched pretty well in spring training, and he had shown some good things in AAA. He has not had a great major league career after coming up with the Braves and then being sent to Texas. He sits around 91, 92 with his fastball, but he looked fresh and he looked good in this game. He didn't go deep. He only went 4 2/3 innings, but 8 strikeouts, which is very impressive. I think that was a career high for him. No earned runs, only 1 walk. He probably could have gone deeper in the game, but Snitker took him out. I think he only threw about 71 pitches. But this is also encouraging. I don't know how many starts the Braves need from Allard, but if he can give them this or even a little worse than this, give me 5 innings and 2 or 3 runs, and we're gonna be happy with those performances. So the Braves have sent down Schuster, by the way. So it looks like Allard and Soroka, they're going to roll with them for a little while. So Allard gives up no earned runs. The Braves actually shut out the Twins in this game. Matt Olson goes deep again late in this game as he'd hit several home runs in Cincinnati. He goes deep in this game. Another one to center field, left center field. So Braves take that one 3-0. All right, so that leads into what looked like, this is a showdown between NL East, top team in the Braves and the second place team in the Marlins. I'm sure the Marlins wanted to come out in this game and make a statement. The Braves have basically owned the Marlins over the last several seasons, and it did not start well for the Marlins at all. The Braves mashed 6 home runs in this game. There were a lot of runs. I think 5 runs were scored in the first inning. As you guys know, the Braves seem to be, for whatever reason, they are really good at scoring runs in the first inning. So, 6 home runs. You get 2 home runs from Olson, 1 from Rosario. Riley, Murphy, and Acuna each hit 1 as well. And just kind of bury the Marlins. Braves end up scoring 16 runs in this game. And this was the return of Michael Soroka. Of course, you guys know he came up at the beginning of June, made 2 starts on the road, was sent back to AAA. He gets recalled after pitching. Actually, he's had 3 really good starts in AAA, so very encouraging him coming into this game, and he pitched well. And this was his return to Atlanta. So, guys, this is his first start in Atlanta since 2020, and the broadcast made the point that that was not in front of any fans, of course, in 2020. So he hadn't pitched in front of Braves fans at home since September of 2019. It's just insane how long of a road he's had to come for this moment. And he pitched well, guys. It wasn't perfect. He had 1 bad inning, but 5 good innings. So he pitched 6 innings, gave up 3 earned runs, 7 strikeouts, no walks, and he did give up 2 home runs, both in that 3rd inning where things just seemed to fall apart on him a little bit, but he was able to get back on it and go 6 innings. So, I made a point 1 or 2 episodes ago, the Braves have not had a ton of quality starts, meaning at least 6 innings pitched, 3 runs or less. So this is the quality start from Soroka after getting a really good one from Strider and a really good one from Elder recently. So the starting staff has seemed to also, it's not that they've been bad, but they haven't been going really deep lately. Well, now they've started to go a little deeper. Soroka actually, the benefit of Soroka is he tends to go deeper into games. He is pretty efficient with his pitches. And so that being said, this was a really solid one from Soroka. The 3rd inning was where he struggled. It just looked like his off-speed pitches. He left a changeup up in the zone for a 2-run homer in this, and then Soler also hit a hanging slider off of him. His fastball and sinker were both very effective in this game. And I always look for body language on pitchers. I mentioned that to you guys early in the season. Mentor, you could just read his body language, or his lack of confidence maybe, or whatever. And Soroka kind of appeared that way too in his first 2 starts. And in this start, he was really hopping off the mound, and he just looked good. Like he feels like he's back. And I really hope that is true and he can sustain this long term. Obviously, for him, it would be awesome. For the Braves, it would be incredibly beneficial for Soroka to be this good for the rest of the season. So, he looked way better. That fastball velocity was up. He was more like 92, 93 in those road starts. Last night he was more 94, 95, and he hit 96 a few times. But not just velocity. The movement was better, and the command was better. He dotted the corners quite a few times, and for a couple strikeouts as well. So everything was looking much better for Soroka, and I'm really encouraged by this start, guys. You guys know I'm a huge fan of him. I don't know any Brave who's not pulling for Michael Soroka. and and they need him, right? They need him, especially the back end of this rotation has been a question mark. So anything he can give them is just gravy. All right, so let's shift to the Braves offense for a few minutes. How have the Braves been able to find another offensive gear in June, right? They were already a top 5 offense in baseball really coming into June, but they have been on an elite level, basically better than any team in this month. And I'm focusing, and you've had a lot of good play from basically almost everybody in the lineup. But 3 guys particularly that I think if these guys are going and continue to go at this rate, this offense just cannot be stopped. The number 1 guy is Michael Harris. As you guys know, he struggled mightily, 2 separate injuries, had a weird start to the season, but really, really struggled through the first part of June. But in the month of June, Harris has hit .372 with 5 home runs and 14 RBIs, and with only a 12% strikeout rate, which is very low for him. Of course, what that means is it's simple. He is, swinging at strikes. He's laying off of balls, and he's getting better pitches to hit because of that, and he's doing damage. He's staying on the ball longer, and this, of course, helps him do all of this. And he's also doing damage off of off-speed pitches, which has been the pitch that has typically give him more trouble. But that home run he hit against Minnesota was an off-speed pitch. I've seen him, you might have noticed this, guys, several of his hits is where he's really staying on the slider longer and, is able to hit it into right field, right center field. So just a really good month, obviously, for Harris after such a struggle. Raised his batting average from 163 to 266. That's remarkable, right? To be able to pull up your batting average by over 100 points in one calendar month. And what this sets up for him is, it was looking like a lost season for Harris, and instead he's grabbed it back to, he could have a great season again. If he continues to hit this way, he's probably not going to hit 372 for the rest of the season, but even if he can hit around 300 for the rest of the season, right, he ends up maybe in the 280s or 290s in a batting average and maybe getting to 20 home runs or something like that. So he's really gotten his season back on track. And that's all good for the Braves because they were not getting much value from center field up to that point. All right, the second guy, Eddie Rosario. He has hit .325 with 9 home runs and 22 RBIs in the month of June. And Eddie has a 12% walk rate in the month of June. His strikeout rate's actually higher than it is for his career, not by a lot, but so he's striking out a little bit more, but he's walking a lot more than usual. And again, what does this mean? He is laying off of balls. Eddie, if you watch him sometimes, especially when he's really not going well, he'll swing at balls that are, he'll swing at 58-foot curveballs, and then he'll swing at a fastball that's at his neck. And he's not really doing that right now, right? He's laying off, and he's swinging at strikes. And when he does that, he is an elite bat-to-ball hitter, and he hits the ball hard. And you're just seeing that come to fruition with Rosario in this month. This is really his best stretch since we know he was just on fire for the 2021 postseason. And it's really good to see for him. He had a long stretch of struggle, right, with the eye issues and even just coming back from that. So he seems to be fully back as well. So this is another really important turn of events for the Braves. And, the last since it has been a little while since I've been with you guys, the last episode I did, I was questioning, should the Braves start looking at left field at the trade deadline because Eddie was not giving them tremendous value. He was basically a zero WAR player at that time. So maybe, I doubt Eddie heard me. Maybe he heard me, but thank you, Eddie, for just taking that and just going off. And he definitely went off in the month of June. Hopefully he can continue that kind of play as well I actually think he is a fringy. I didn't mention him, but he's actually maybe a fringy all-star candidate as well. I don't think he'll make it. But when you start going through the list of outfielders, he's not too far down the list of, some of the best offensive outfielders in the National League. All right, and then the third guy, Matt Olson. Olson is also a guy that maybe early in June was really frustrating some Braves fans. Still hitting home runs, but really hitting for a low average. He was around the 220s. Well, in June, he has hit 272, which is not an incredibly high average. It is pretty high for him, and he has a high on-base percentage with that. But what we do know is he's impacting the ball big time. So 11 home runs, 25 RBIs in June for Olson. 24% strikeout rate, which is going to sound high. It's actually low for him. He's usually in the 30s. When he's going bad, it can get as high as 40. That's where it was early in the season. So 24% means he's making more contact. And with Olson, when he makes contact, he hits it hard. And so, we're just seeing that from him. Most of his home runs are from center field to the opposite field, and that is also a really good sign for him that he's staying through the ball. He's had a couple home runs where I was impressed that it got out of the ballpark. I mean, he just shows you the kind of power he has. The first home run he hit last night against Miami, he had to bring his hands in, and he hit it to center field. I'm like, there's no way that ball's getting out, and it did. And so he is definitely locked in on a different level, totally on fire right now. And probably what June has done is it's turned him into all-star. I don't think he was headed there before this month. Right now, he leads the National League in home runs and RBIs. He has 28 home runs, 67 RBIs. So Matt Olson, playing great right now, and hopefully he will continue as well. So at the halfway point, just as a reminder, guys, the Braves are on pace for 108 wins. They are 7 games over the Marlins. They have the lead in the National League East. They are 11 games over Philadelphia. The Marlins and Phillies actually have two of the better records in June, and they've been able to gain no ground because the Braves have played so well. And then, of course, the Mets, I just have to mention, they are 18 and a half games back right now. That is just insane to think about. The Mets are only 3 games ahead of the Nationals as we speak. So while I would say we probably don't have to worry about the Mets this season just because of how their season has gone, we still want to at least keep an eye on the Marlins and the Phillies. The Braves know all too well that you have to keep your foot on the gas all the way through the season, and I'm sure they intend to do that. But, this team to this point, it's, the pitching has certainly played a big part, and it has to in any baseball season, but the story's really been about the offense, guys, this prodigious offense. And just one way I wanted to highlight how good this offense has been would be to look at full season projections. So here we are halfway through the year. It's really easy to do projections for a full season, statistically speaking. So I'm going to do that here in a second. But, we know that this team hits the ball harder and hits the ball farther than any team in baseball. I think the stat is the Braves have 18 home runs of 18 home runs of 450 or more feet. No other team has more than 6. So that tells you, now Acuna is number 1 on the list, but they have several guys who've hit 450 home runs or more, right? Guys who hit the ball over 110 miles an hour consistently. Teams just don't do that. The Braves are more capable at hitting the ball harder and farther than any team in baseball. They have added output. This added output has coincided with better plate discipline and letting the ball travel more. So we really started to see that at the beginning of June. I remember when the Braves were in Arizona, you really saw a more concerted effort to hit the ball up the middle and the other way, and every guy in the lineup started to be a little more patient at the plate. And all of this has coincided into this offensive onslaught. So hopefully this has been kind of a light bulb moment for the Braves, and they can just continue to be a dominant offensive team for the rest of the season. And this is, I think, even caused their situational hitting to be a little better. I've told you guys, it's really hard at this point. It's really hard to be critical of this offense. That has always been the frustration. And when they're not going, at their highest peak of performance, the situational hitting issue is certainly a little more noticeable. When you're hitting 5 and 6 home runs a game, who cares if your situational hitting is all that good? But I really think the better, the better plate discipline and all that stuff really does translate in pretty much every aspect of your game offensively. Maybe I'm making it up, but it seems like they've been way better at getting single runs in as well. Hitting some more sac flies and that sort of thing to just get that extra run in at the end of an inning. So that being said, let's go through these projections and just kind of figure out where all of these guys are going to be. And what I wanted to do is just go through the starting lineup 1 through 9 and go through each guy that way. So, of course, we start with Ronald Acuna Jr., and we know that he's having a historic season. And if if all of his numbers were to obviously just double, he would be at 40 home runs, 74 stolen bases, which is just insane to think about those two numbers together. Nobody has ever come close to doing that in the history of baseball. He would also, he's leading the league in a whole lot of different stats, so I'm not going to pull all these out. But the other one I just mentioned, he's on pace for 148 runs scored, which is also an incredible number. And if he does that, he is a unanimous MVP. And so, will he continue at this rate? I don't know. I mean, I certainly think he can. Part of me thinks he's just getting started with his home runs. He didn't have all that many in April, and I think he's really started. I mean, do you remember, guys, that there were some people talking about Acuna's just not lifting the ball enough, and I just kept thinking it's going to come because he's going to get more and more back to that old swing that he had, and in fact, I think he has a better swing now than he ever has. So I could actually see that home run total be a little more than 40. And every time he gets on base, he's stealing a base. I mean, he is unstoppable there. So even at second, he's still in third a lot. So I don't see him slowing down much, guys. I think he's going to have, at the end of the year, a historic season. Okay, right now, Ozzy's hitting second a lot, so let's go to second. The second spot with Ozzy. He projects at 36 home runs and 112 RBIs from the second base spot, and those would both be career highs for him. Ozzy's basically having an Ozzy season. He's hitting about 260. His on-base percentage is, I think, like 312. Are those lights out? No, but he is impacting the ball a lot. He's got not only a lot of home runs, but when you add some doubles and a couple of triples into the mix, he's probably going to end up with 70-plus extra base hits and probably at an over 800 slugging percentage. All right, Austin Riley. Riley is the guy who I think has played a little below what he's typically capable of doing, and I hope and expect him to have a better second half. So I think this projection is likely going to be better, but you never know. All right, so Riley right now would be at 30 home runs and 86 RBIs. Again, if that's his down year, we're okay with that, right? I think he's probably going to go on a tear at some point and get a little better than what he's been this season. Could I see him ending with 35 home runs and 100 RBIs? I think that's more likely. That's basically where he's been the last two seasons. But obviously, we'll see on that one. All right, Sean Murphy, 28 home runs, 94 RBIs. Murphy's hit a couple home runs in the last few games, so that's good to see. I think it's always just challenging offensively as a catcher to put up huge numbers in this day and age because you're just not playing as many games. But it's still, Murphy is still one of the league leaders in WAR. Obviously his defense is incredible as well. So for the Braves to get anything close to 30 home runs and 100 RBIs from Murphy in a season is just awesome. He's had an awesome first season as a Brave. And I'm going to tag on d'Arnaud to this as well. d'Arnaud is only projected at 12 home runs because, he's only at 6 right now. As we all know, he missed a ton of time with that concussion. I actually am going to project him to be more like at a 15 home run by the end of the year. He's looked really good offensively lately. And I think him and Murphy will continue to split the time fairly evenly. So he's going to get plenty of opportunities. So I think he's going to be more like a 15 home run guy, which is still really solid. All right, Matt Olson, 56 home runs and 134 RBIs is what he's projected at. That's crazy numbers. It's awesome. I mean, we know, guys, that he's not going to be a high average guy, but if he continues to do what he's doing, look out. It's kind of hard to imagine because he's been on such a big home run tear that he's going to continue at this home run rate. But does he get to 50? Does he get to 130? Yeah, I think those are very reachable, and that would be obviously awesome for the Braves. All right, Ozuna, 32 home runs, 74 RBIs would be his numbers right now. Of course, we know he had such a terrible April, but he's been so good in May and June. If he continued that pace, then those numbers could be even better. But that's a great bounce back for him. Eddie Rosario, 28 home runs, 80 RBIs. This would be by far Eddie's best offensive season in probably 3 years, maybe more than that. So it's really encouraging to see him back after the eye issues. This is the first time he's been the old Eddie Rosario in a long time. Orlando Arcia, again, congratulations, Orlando, making the All-Star team. He's on track for 12 home runs, 52 RBIs. Right now he's hitting right around 300, so hopefully he will continue those things. He's a guy I could see dipping a little bit. Maybe he's played a little bit over his skis in the first half of the season, but even if he ends up, hitting 280 with 10 home runs and 40 RBIs for the season, I'm like, that's awesome. Just keep playing great defense, and obviously doing better than that would be even better, but it's everything we've gotten from Orlando has been gravy as far as I'm concerned. All right, and then of course Michael Harris hitting 9th. Now this projection's funny because of course he missed so much time and struggled so much at the beginning of the year. If you just double his numbers, Harris is at 14 home runs and 44 RBIs for the year. Guys, I don't think that's possible. I am projecting him to be more at 20 home runs and 60 RBIs. And I think he could even go beyond that, but I want to temper my excitement of what I've seen from Harris lately. Like I said, he's not going to continue to hit like 370 every month, but I do think he's figured a lot of stuff out, and he's just so talented, guys. So I think he's going to pull his weight and then some at the bottom of the order. Think about that. Your 9-hole hitter could have 20 home runs by the end of the season. This lineup, there's nowhere to go for pitchers. You might have 1 or 2 guys slumping or struggling a bit at any given time. But, if you go through this lineup right now, who's struggling? Who's slumping? Arcia has had maybe 2 bad weeks. But other than that, everybody's hitting right now. Ozzy's been, maybe a little slowed down the last week or so, but he's done some good things too. This lineup is elite. They don't have the most runs scored in baseball. I think there's a few teams ahead of them there, maybe at least a handful, which is hard to imagine. But I think by the end of the year, they are the best offensive team in baseball. That being said, right, it's the pitching staff, and I'm like, this might be more of the key. We know now how elite this offense is. Can the pitching staff shore up a little bit and really put the Braves ahead of everybody in baseball, as this is the elite team in baseball? One really positive thing over the last week, maybe even over just the last few days, is that the Braves pitching depth has really shown signs of rounding into form. So, of course, you get a good start from Colby Allard. I don't know that we can rely on him long term. Maybe so. It's good. I don't know how long he's going to be needed. But to me, Michael Soroka, and I've told you this, guys, before, is he's just a big key to this team. Because if he's back in any reasonable way, basically like what he showed last night, this is huge for the Braves. If you can slot him into your fifth spot, basically, then you are golden for the rest of the year. Now, that has to be tied to the return of Max Fried, right? And at the very beginning of the season, I told you guys that Max Fried is probably the most critical piece to this team. And you might be looking at me now and being like, well, the Braves are on pace for 108 wins, basically without Max Fried. Not, and so that might appear that he's not important or as important, as valuable, but we know that Max Fried is the most consistent pitcher the Braves have. Even with Strider, we've seen, some of his ups and downs this season. Max Fried, if he comes back healthy, he's a 2.5 ERA guy who's going to give you a quality start almost every time out. And if he can come back and be that ace in the second half of the season, this team could just take off in a way that we've never seen a Braves team do it before. He's throwing bullpen sessions now. Soon he's going to be going to live BP. And then eventually, if all that goes well, he can, make a couple rehab starts. I don't know how many starts the Braves would want to give him in rehab. But nonetheless, we're talking mid-July has been the timetable this whole time. That's only a couple weeks from now. Maybe just before the All-Star break, maybe just after. But getting Max Fried back along with Michael Soroka being good again, I mean, that is a huge, huge bump for the Braves and their pitching staff. And of course, all of that also impacts the bullpen, gives them a little more rest and a little more health leading into the postseason. So for a team that has a 99.9% chance of making the postseason, and close to that of winning their division, the Braves are going to be there, guys. Should we count our chickens before they hatch? Maybe not, but man, we got to feel good about this team, and we're allowed to do that for sure. So looking forward into July, I do think it's going to be a little bit more of a challenging month for the Braves. It's a bit of a tougher schedule than June was, but not as tough as May. So you have a showdown with Tampa Bay happening. The Braves travel to Tampa just before the All-Star break. The Braves have 23 games in July, and by my count, probably 14 of those games would be against potential playoff teams. So, tougher games, and yet opportunity for the Braves to round into form even that much more, and especially against Tampa Bay. It's a good measuring stick of a series as they go in, they go away to Tampa, and the Rays have been incredibly good at home this year. So it's a great challenge for them. So there's 12 home games and 11 away games in July. And, I just say this is an opportunity for the Braves to now go and prove that you're the best team in baseball. Overtake Tampa Bay for the best record in the major leagues. You win 2 out of 3 or sweep Tampa Bay. It's going to be a really big statement. Not that the Braves need more confidence. I mean, if you watch them right now, they are just so immensely confident, feeling good. I mean, going to a Braves game in Atlanta right now has to be a ton of fun. And that 16-4 game last night was a ton of fun to watch. So, all right, guys. Well, that is it for me. It was really good to be back with you guys. And I will definitely be back with you sooner than 2 weeks from now, as I'm not going back to Europe anytime soon. So, that being said, looking forward to these last 2 games against Miami. Just 2 more series leading into the All-Star break. And hopefully we can get a couple more Braves on the All-Star team as well. All right, guys. Well, that's it for me for State of the Braves. I did want to mention I'm now on Twitter, so you can follow me there at State O the Braves. And of course, please continue to watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, that is it. And I will talk to you soon.